Welcome on Life, Death, and Beyond. We have a very special guest. Well, maybe I should say two guests, as Asher is joining us through telepathy and Jes is joining us in person. This is going to be an audio-only version of the conversation to protect and honor their wishes. In the conversation, Jes, a devoted teacher, and Asher, an autistic mystic, share their story of how they came to be together, writing, creating, and sharing their knowledge in this amazing journey. Jes translates Asher's information that he gets from the other realms, and Asher teaches Jes through the process. It's a unique relationship that they have. You can find their website at ashertree.com, and their book is published by 6 Books, an imprint of Collective Ink Publishing, and available at all major booksellers as a paperback and ebook. A second book is on the way and will be announced on their monthly newsletter, which you can also sign up for on their website. Welcome, Jes. So glad that you could join us today. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
So am I, Laura. Thank you very much for inviting me.
You're welcome. From what I've seen and heard, you've been on such an amazing journey with Asher and the teacher-student relationship that you have. That's very interesting, and not a lot of people get to experience that.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey, certainly. Yes, not at all the way I expected my teaching career to end up, but
Yeah,
I
that's
feel very
amazing.
privileged.
Awesome. So can you start off with sharing where you're from?
Yeah, I'm from England, UK. I currently live in what we call the West Country, which is the sort of little southwest finger that points off the bottom of England towards America. So I live down in that part. And when I was working with Asher, I lived nearer to London, which is over on the east side. But yeah,
Okay.
that's where I'm from.
Awesome. I have great-great-grandparents that came from Glastonbury, Somerset area, and a couple years ago I tried to do family history and took a journey over there for a couple weeks trying to find it, and I ended up with a dead end. And my parents that came over on the ship, they I guess decided not to have dual citizenship, so not able to, kind of do that on my journey. So unfortunately.
Oh, that's a shame. Would have been nice to do that, but yes, that's just the area, Somerset. That's where I'm living now. So yeah, it's there's not an awful lot of locals here left. A lot of the people who move here are incomers, so it's quite a transient sort of population. But certainly an interesting town, as I'm sure you discovered.
Beautiful. Yeah. Now, if you don't mind, would you share how you met Asher and started to get to work with him?
Sure. Yeah, and in fact, the way I met him actually feeds into the title of your program, The Life, Death and Beyond, because the beyond came in really fast. So, yeah, I was a primary school teacher, that's elementary school age, and I was working in a specialist class for children with speech and language difficulties. So all the kids I taught had a statement of special educational needs, and I'd been doing that job for around 7 years, I think. And we had quite a large turnaround because there was huge demand for places. So as soon as a kid they could talk intelligibly or they could understand well enough to get by in a mainstream class, they were out and the next one was in. And yeah, I'd been doing it for quite a few years, and then I had this family arrive with a little boy who'd been in a mainstream school, and it was just the same sort of story of all the other kids I'd had. They'd expected that when he went to school he'd start to learn to speak and just copy the other children, but Asher didn't. He just couldn't manage. He understood everything, but he couldn't manage to vocalize. He had a problem called oral dyspraxia, which is with the muscles of the mouth not moving the way you want them to. So things like moving your tongue about and so forth. So he fitted the bill perfectly for my class. He hadn't been able to establish friendships and relationships with the kids in mainstream. And so as soon as there was a space for him, and that was when he was just turned 6, we had him into our specialist class. And almost from the get-go, everything seemed to change in the classroom. I only had 10 students. It was a very intensive place, but
Mm-hmm.
things went missing that shouldn't have gone missing, that I knew I'd laid out ready. Lessons that I'd got planned seemed to just go pear-shaped. And I thought, well, either I'm getting very paranoid or somebody is sabotaging my lessons. And I looked around at this sort of angelic little group of sweet children who worked ever so hard and thought, well, how, is it one of them? What's changed? And of course, the only thing that had changed was that one kid had left and Asher had joined. So I thought, I'll keep a close eye on him. And I started watching him very, very carefully for the next few weeks. And I realized that he was the one who always found, in inverted commas, the missing object that, and it was always somewhere completely stupid. I mean, the one I'm thinking of was I'd put out a big horseshoe magnet to use in a science lesson with the class, and suddenly it wasn't there anymore, and the kids are all searching around for this magnet, and Asher suddenly found it at the bottom of a pencil pot at the other side of the room. And I thought, well, I know I didn't put it there, and how come he found it there? Could it be that he had actually hidden it? So it just built up these little ideas of, this kid is up to something. So eventually I took him aside and I said, look, why are you playing these mind games on me? And why are you doing this? And of course, he's only 6. And he said, what's mind games? And I explained that it was the sort of little tricks he was playing on me and the way he was messing up my lessons. And he just gave me the hugest grin you can imagine, looked absolutely radiant, and said, so it's you. I said, well, I'm sorry. And he explained to me I don't quite know how he explained it to me because he had very little language, but I definitely got the message that he'd been trying these tricks of his out on various adults in his life since he was 3 or 4, because he knew that there was an adult he would meet when he was born, who was going to be his special helper. And
Mm-hmm.
so the tricks were his way of locating this person, the one who picked up what he was doing and was tuned into him enough to pick up what he was doing. And when he found that person, he'd known that he'd found her. So he just looked at me and grinned and said, I thought it was you. And
Interesting.
yeah, so I said, well, how did you know this? And he said, we made a deal. That was his way of explaining it. And I said, well, you've only just been in my class a few weeks. I don't remember making any deals with you. And he looked at me as if I was completely stupid and said, before I was born. And I got goosebumps all over. And I thought, hang on, we're talking about soul contracts here? Is this what he's telling me? And it was. It was not something on my radar at all. I had no idea that such things were real. I'd heard of them, but
Mm-hmm.
it had never occurred to me that A, I would have made soul contracts with somebody, and B, that this person would arrive remembering it and knowing that this had happened. And sure enough, I mean, he's now in his mid-30s and we are still really close friends. And that's crazy because teacher and pupil, you're usually with them for a year or so and then you move on and don't see
Right.
much of each other again. But it just happened that every year at primary school, for some reason, whatever age he was, I ended up teaching the class he was in. And even when he moved into the mainstream school, I still ended up as his teacher. And it wasn't through me planning it. It was like I was told by management, you've got to move into this class. And I go, oh, good grief, that's Asher's class again. And they said, well, sorry, but we need you in that class now. So, yeah, so until he was 11, just about every year I was his teacher. And then after he left that school, by that time we had become so very close. Other things had happened in his life. He'd had a very, very sad bereavement. And I promised his mother on her deathbed, in fact, because she was the one who he lost, that I would be a lifelong friend to him. And I'm still going.
Beautiful. Love that journey. Um, so, and then he went through, from understand, some form of diagnosis, and how has that affected his life?
The autism diagnosis,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, when I first got his paperwork, when he joined my class as a 6-year-old, I was told he had something called semantic pragmatic disorder, which was kind of code for mild autism. But it wasn't until he was 16, I think, that he went for a formal diagnosis because his teachers at school, I presume, at secondary school, had decided that, they needed a diagnosis to find out what exactly his issues were. And at that, he was told he had Asperger's syndrome. And the doctor who spoke to him, I think, made it sound like a complete pathology, a really sort of awful thing to have, and told him, I suppose, the things they're still telling kids today, that, you're not like everybody else and you've got to try and behave like other people so that you won't look weird and people will like you better, and you've got to try and copy your classmates. And um, yeah, he sort of told him the reasons for all the anxiety and all the problems he was having with sort of super sensitivity to sounds, and differences between him and other children. And during the course of that interview, the doctor said to him, well, is there anything else that you're noticing that sets you apart from other people your age? And he said, well, yeah, I do get these kind of, not visions exactly, but I know things that other people don't know, and I can sort of find things out just by focusing on them. And he was just told that these were delusions of grandeur and they were very, very common in autism, and he was to ignore them because they were obviously rubbish. And he went from being, certainly with me, very open about the experience he was getting, about moving out of body, about finding things from what he calls the realms. And he went right inside himself and just said to me, well, the doctor knows a lot about this stuff, so he's obviously right, so I've got to ignore it and I can't do this anymore, and so I'm just not going to talk about these things. And if I do get any of these things come through, then I'm just going to tell myself they're not real and I'm not going to take any notice. And I mean, I was horrified, Laura. I really was sick to the stomach, because although we kind of kept it as a secret between ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
I'd by this time we knew each other very, very well, and he'd shared so much with me, which was quite obviously coming from spirit. He was quite obviously so tuned into his higher self, so tuned into guidance from what he called the realms and other dimensions, I suppose. And I just said, no, the doctor's wrong. And he said, well, no, he's not. And if you think that I'm doing all this stuff, then you're delusional as well, just like me. And so for quite a few years, he just shut down that side of himself quite intentionally. And it took until he was sort of into adulthood, really, to pick it up again and to actually accept that baby doctors don't know it all.
Yeah, and I agree with that statement. And because like if that was me, then I probably would have been diagnosed as well. Because ever since I was a child, I've had similar situations. Like I knew things, I had visions, I knew when people were gonna die, I seen people on the other side. I had a lot of texture issues, and I couldn't eat certain foods, couldn't
Yep.
and it was like I didn't like large crowds. And I'm very artistic, and so I would have fit in the same thing, but I never, because maybe I didn't have that big where I couldn't talk or anything like that. It kind of went unnoticed. Otherwise, I probably would have been diagnosed as well. And it's really important that people know that when you diagnose somebody, it can shut people down, and it does have a negative effect. And it's unfortunate that in today's society, medical psychology, that we do that to people. It can make
Yeah.
them. I even went in and got my master's degree in counseling because I didn't want to do psychology and diagnose people. And I just knew that intuitively that I didn't want to do that, but I wanted to help people. So I went counseling instead of psychiatry and
Mm.
giving them medications because that's doing harm to people. And,
Yeah.
that's part of why I feel like this is an important topic that we do get out there to people and share. Just because somebody doesn't fit into a box doesn't mean they're different, right? So, but I think a lot
Yeah.
of people do have these abilities, and we just shut it down because it's not what society wants.
No, I totally agree with you. And I think it's great that over the last year or two, people are starting to
Mm-hmm.
come out. I was talking to somebody the other day and I said to her, it's almost one of these, another Me Too moment. Suddenly people are saying, actually, just like you've just done, I had that and I had those experiences. And I can remember doing that as a child. And so often, if we're not shut down as children, because that
Mm-hmm.
happens too, no, you haven't got a friend sitting in the corner because I can't see her, therefore you're telling lies or whatever. And these children, there's so many documented cases of children communicating with grandparents who've passed over. And I think little kids have all got it
Mm-hmm.
when they're born. And Asher definitely is saying that. He's saying when we come in as spirit, we have so much. You only have to look in a little child's eyes and they're just so full of light, aren't they? That's
Mm-hmm.
why we're so drawn to look at a baby or a toddler, because they've got this shining light in their eyes, and gradually by the time they get to 7 or 8, that's starting to shut down in so many cases because they're not being encouraged in it. There's so much pressure for them to behave normally and not say weird things, and not freak grandma out, and not not upset your school teacher by saying that you've got a friend who's helping you with your answers or whatever, because if they've still got that link. And I think the children who are less mainstream, I suppose, the ones like you've just described yourself, and certainly like Asher, who don't follow the norm quite like everyone else and do still hold on to those things. They're kind of in the minority, but it's so good that they are, because they are the ones who are bringing this information forward and being able to share it with the rest of us. And I'm just so grateful to people like him and people like you that you're around to do that. I think it's wonderful, and the more the rest of
Yeah.
us can wake up to it, the better it'll be.
Yeah, definitely. And definitely send Asher, our support. And so glad that he's coming back, around and sharing all the wisdom that he has. And, he's not alone.
Yeah, he's a good guy, and what
Hmm.
made a difference to him was that he always found it difficult to express himself through words, even though he did learn to speak absolutely fine. He can talk about ordinary everyday things. He could go into a shop and buy something or something like that. But when it comes to talking about things from the realms, about other dimensions, he says that just he can't find the words for it. He doesn't like the words, and so that's why we're working with telepathy, because I'm the one who has to find the words, and he just puts the ideas into my head.
Mhm.
So that's how we've come to work the way we are.
That makes sense. Yeah, because like when I channel information, I do automatic writing. It's they put it in here and I have to put it in words so that I can put it in books for people to understand it. So that makes
Yeah.
sense. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's exactly our process. I mean, he's still living over in London, and I'm down here 150 miles away. But we sit every evening. We have a set time, and I wouldn't
Beautiful.
say every evening I'm getting loads of stuff from him. I'm not, because it's like anybody. You don't always have things to say to each other. But like when we've been writing our books, great sort of downloads of information will come to me, and I'll just write it all down, and then. Yeah, sometimes it comes in words, but usually it just comes in thoughts. And as you say, you then have to translate it into words to make it work.
Perfect. Without going to like politics, and there's this thing out there now that we're going through about like all the vaccines and how it causes like body impairments, dysmorphia, and things like that. What is your view on that, or what has Asher said about that?
It's not something Ash has ever actually taken on board. I think he gets quite frustrated, as do I, with all the autism's bad thing and it's caused by this drug or this vaccine or this whatever. Like, it's a nasty illness and we've got to stamp it out, because neurodiversity is needed in our society. He says it's a wider bandwidth than what you might call neurotypical people have got. There's
Hmm.
there's such a range of, and not everybody who's got autism, say, is spiritually gifted, not by any means. A lot of them, don't have any interest in that at all. Some of them are much more interested in patterns or mathematics or art or whatever. But in his case, and in the case of quite a few others, there's such gifts. There's information that I think it was Temple Grandin said that if you hadn't got neurodivergence, then you'd never have had the first caveman pick up the first bit of rock and use it as a tool, because you need the ones who are not going to just follow the party line, if you like, and are just going to do things differently and think of another way of being and just see things in a completely different way. And
Hmm.
I think we're just so lucky to have such people amongst us. So I get quite irritated when you get whoever turning around and sort of saying, "Oh, we've got to stamp it out because it's a bad thing." It's really not.
Hmm. No,
That's not.
it's not. I don't think it is either. And it's hard for me to really see, if the vaccines have caused it. I mean, we live in toxins any every day and all day anyway. You know what I mean? So like within a vaccine, we are injecting ourselves with it. But like it's in our water, it's in our air, because we do all these things to the universe, and the earth. And so it's hard to really say and pinpoint where it's actually coming from, if that's the case.
Well, I mean, from what Asher has told me, he planned, and he can remember this, he planned in spirit before he was born in great detail. And I've had other people, even non-speaking autistic people, tell me this, that they've got like a blueprint for their human body.
Mm-hmm.
And we might look at somebody with a very, very challenged physical body who's obviously reliant on other people to do all sorts of things for them. I know a young lady who fits into that category. She's non-verbal. She's not even capable of using the spelling boards or technology because she can't control her body sufficiently. So if she wants to communicate, it's either raising her eyebrows or using telepathy. And she says I made this really detailed plan of that was how I wanted my body to be in this life. That was the
Mhm.
way I wanted to incarnate, and I chose which parents to be born to, and I chose to live this life. And Asher says exactly the same, that this
Mm.
isn't an unhappy accident. It's not even a happy accident. It's not an accident at all. It was an intention right from the start that they would come into this lifetime with those particular bodily challenges. And Ash says he's loosely embodied. He's not as good a fit in his physical body as some neurotypical people are, as I am, for example. I can't go out of body. I haven't had near death experiences. I haven't had any of that stuff. But he can do it, and he's always been able to do it. He can move out and he can move in. And there's all this stuff about the walking on tiptoe, which a lot of children who are like this do. And it's like they don't quite belong in their body. And he said, well, I know some people are trying to get us integrated and get us back into our bodies, but actually I'm very happy with the way I am. He said, I've got my physical body that does my everyday stuff, and the rest of the time I can go off to the realms and find out all the information I want to share with you. I want you to bring back for you to share with other people through your writing. And he said that's the way I planned it. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's safe to say that with our intention, we're helping to develop the body that's being created in the womb if we're going to have challenges like that.
Yeah. Yes, I believe that's the case.
Okay, because that's kind of what I was getting in my mind when you were talking about it. Um, so, which it makes sense to me because if we're making those choices, we need to have the suit. Because for me, we're not our body. We're the spirit, the soul, the being who inhibits the body, and we just use us as a form, but we attach to it like it is who we are, like our persona, our identity. Um, so that definitely makes sense. And, there's times where I have to remember I have a body. So I don't know, maybe I'm the same way, and
Yeah.
because I don't have an identity that I per se, I don't really identify. And sometimes I have to remember that I have a body and I tend to be like in people call it the woo woo. But I
Yeah.
tend to be not here. And I have to intentionally make myself here sometimes and just bring myself in.
I'm so happy to hear you say that, Laura. Do you know, last night I sat down with Asher and said, look, I'm talking to Laura tomorrow. Is there any message you'd like me to give? And I've written it down here, and this is exactly what came through from him. Human lives are a brief flicker of flame in the eternal glow of the soul. It's important to see ourselves primarily as spirit, not as body and brain.
I love that. And
So that
thank him for the message. Appreciate it.
I will, oh certainly, yeah. But I mean, it just amplifies what you just said, doesn't it? It's
Mm-hmm.
completely the same message. It's just that, yeah, we're not humans who have spiritual experiences. We're spirit who are temporarily having a human experience, and some of us
Yeah.
to a greater degree than others.
That's beautiful. Well, hopefully, we know with getting this information out, and then I know about the telepathic tapes and all that. Hopefully, we can change the narrative around the medical and psychology and getting diagnosis, and just learning more about who we truly are. You know, as spirit and not the human, and switching that around.
Yeah.
At some point.
I do feel it's coming. I really do. As you
Mhm.
say, the telepathy tapes has made a huge impact, and I think they've got a film coming out, and they've been testing these kids under double blind, ways that the scientists can't turn around and just say, oh, yeah, you made it up. Oh, yeah, it was just sort of trickery or sleight of hand or something. I haven't seen it yet. I don't know how it's going to go, but sooner or later, people are going to tip over, and people are already tipping over into understanding that, yeah, there is something about this. These children are sharing, and young people are sharing something that's very, very important for us to know. And as you say, just that tipping point needs to come where, yeah, they
Mhm.
stop trying to think everything's down to the material and start realizing that, spirit is the primary force, and this is just a temporary blip in our lives. I mean, it's an important blip in our lives. I'm not
Mhm.
saying we're just here by chance, but we've got plenty of work to do while we're incarnated, while we're on Earth. But I think it's very important that we have the big picture as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And so I had a couple experiences of telepathy. And one of them is my near-death experience, because although I have like had those experiences and I tend to be open, was a point in my life where I kind of ignore them, also as well, not through diagnosis, but just by trying to fit in and not being my
Yeah,
true self. So a lot of it I shut down, and then I ended up going through the near-death experience. And then coming back, I experienced telepathy on the other side, and got a lot of the information and remembered who I was. And when I came back, I agreed to share all my information and channeling and write it in books and everything as well. But with telepathy, since I've been back, I've had a couple experiences, and there was a couple that were really interesting. So just briefly, there was one time I went to a park and a person was walking by me, that was seemed to be nonverbal. I don't know that the situation that he was experiencing, but he sent me this message, and it was that they had so much love they didn't know how to express it, and they just sent that to me as they were just walking by. And then
mm,
there was a person that I walked by, and it was a place where a lot of people with disabilities go, and he was outside sweeping the sidewalk. And this was such an amazing experience for me. And I heard him, we talked verbally. He said he was so happy that he was sweeping outside. He was so intent in that small activity that he was doing, having the ability to sweep the sidewalk. He was so in joy and bliss. And he said, hi. And I said, hi. He's like, I'm sweeping. And I'm like, well, you're doing a really great job. And this amazing love came from both of us. And I could feel, and I had so much love, and I can feel and sense, and through telepathy, he was saying, I've never felt this amount of love before. And as
mm,
it was coming from me, it was like it was coming out of my chest to him. And there was this communication between him, telepathy, me hearing it, and then the divine. So it was really an amazing experience with that. It made me cry. So I'm walking down the street crying, as I pass by. And then there
yeah,
was a person who was also nonverbal, and we did a meditation. And in as we rose our vibration and meditation, we were all able to use telepathy and communicate, including the person who is nonverbal. So nobody was left out, and that was amazing. And then the
mm,
last experience I had, because I do readings, or I used to do readings for people. Sometimes I still do it, but this father, his son was autistic, from what they diagnosed him with. And he said, the father wanted a reading and a healing for his son. And he said, I just want my son to be normal. And I said, well, I have to ask your son first, because I don't just do that without a person's approval. So I connected to the son, and I said, would you like a healing or a message to give to your father? And he said, no, he denied it. And he said, his job, his lesson is to love me as I am, not how he wants me to be. And so he denied
mm.
the message that he gave me the message. He denied the reading, and he denied the healing. And that's what I had to tell the father. So, but those were my
Wow.
experiences with that. So
How
powerful,
did the
right?
father take it?
Um, he he was okay with it, and he was like, I understand. You know, he wasn't overly thrilled, but you know, that was part of their agreement. You
Yeah,
know, and that was his lesson. He had to learn to love his son as he is, not as, you know, because we
yeah,
both have agreements on both sides. So like the father had lessons from and takeaway, and so did the child, you know, and they both have agreements. That's why they were together.
yeah. No, that's absolutely true. I think
Mm-hmm.
all of these agreements. I mean, it sounds like a sort of logistical nightmare when you're thinking of it from Earth side, but there's so much going on. It's going back to Asher and his mum. I mean, I thought, oh, how awful, this kid, he had these problems with speaking and all these difficulties, and then he loses his mother to cancer when he's just a young kid. It seems
Mm-hmm.
so wicked. But as an adult, he said to me telepathically that she needed to go. He said she needed to go for her own experience. She'd decided that she was going to leave this life early, and he said that's her stuff. And he said, for me, he said, I needed experience, close up experience of grief as a child,
Mm-hmm.
because he said, I would have grown up being quite glib about life and saying, oh, well, you know, so somebody dies. It's not the end of their life. They're going to go on living in spirit, so it doesn't really matter. And he said that would have been a mistake if I'd said that to people, because obviously we form these hugely strong relationships with people during lifetimes, and when they're no longer with us and we haven't got access to them, then it's the grief is real and it's tangible. And he said I needed to experience that grief, and it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
until some years later that we started to make contact with his mother from the other side. And he sort of realized that, yeah, she was still around and was still looking out for him. And
Beautiful.
yeah, so that, and the third thing that it did was, of course, to cement my relationship with him, because by the by, because he didn't have his mother there, I sort of didn't take over as a mother, because I wasn't his mother. I was a mother of my own children, but I did have a lot of uh, extra time with him. I suppose I mentored him through his early teens and so forth. So yeah, it all kind of fitted together right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, what was the reason? Do you know? I guess because was his. I think I heard that you, or one of your interviews, you were saying the mother wasn't really open to spirituality. Is that maybe why it was you and
Um,
not the mother? Or...
possibly it was that, and possibly it was because I don't know why. I can't see into my Akashic records. He probably can, and he can probably, tell me. I've never actually asked him why it was me rather than his mother. She was not entirely against it, but he never sort of shared the things with her that he later shared with me. And I don't know how she would have reacted to it, but for some reason it needed to be with somebody else. Apparently, in a previous life, we'd worked together as pupil and teacher, and that had gone really well. And we'd been dealing with telepathy in that life as well. And so we decided, he tells me, to use that model again. Or no, it wasn't him that told me that. It was a channel that I spoke to, some channel guide who told me that one. And yeah, it seems to be the case.
Yeah. And I've heard of that too. Like when if we are with other beings, you know, in past lives or different lives, we can continue that into the current life and, you know, continue that journey as with the, so that makes
Yeah.
sense. Hmm. Yeah. Now with the telepathy, so when we come in and we are learning to verbally talk and communicate, you know, It seems like a lot of, do you think it's because we are doing that that it shuts down our telepathy, or do you think it's more because we're kind of try to be fit into a box like society wants us, and that's not appropriate or that's not normal? Or do you think it's a combination?
I think it's probably a combination of the two. Certainly, I think the more people learn speaking, they are going to shut down on the telepathy because that's a much more subtle sense, isn't it? It's not
Hmm.
like going back to you and the young man who was sweeping the path, the fact that you picked up what he was saying, it might have been not quite as obvious as somebody going, "Oi, you," from the other side of the street, sort of
Yeah.
verbally. But uh, I think maybe there's something to be said for the fact that, yeah, we tend to decide that, oh, speaking is what we're supposed to do, so we'll just go ahead with talking, and we'll put that other stuff aside. But you think with a mother and a baby, there is huge amounts of telepathy going on, isn't there? The mother
Hmm.
understands why the baby's crying. They know what's happening. The baby understands if the mother's left the house and they're really upset just because they know their mother isn't around. And
Yeah.
you've got, even Rupert Sheldrake has done loads of experiments with dogs and their owners and the degree of telepathy between them. So I think that non-verbal telepathy is a very, very strong thing. But as you also say, there is this need to fit into the box that society has prepared for us. And yeah, it's quite a constricting box, really, isn't it? It doesn't
Hmm.
really give us a lot of freedom.
Hmm. Yeah. Then what is your, like, if somebody wanted to learn telepathy, because my experiences were not intentional. I know I can do it. I guess if I set my mind to it and do it more and practice it. Do you think, how was your journey with getting onto the path of learning how to do it? So how can people do that, if they wanted to open that back up?
Oh, that's a $1 million question. I've asked that so many times. I mean, I wish I could just say, right, first of all, step one, step two, step three, but you know yourself, it's not quite that easy, is it? Um, I suppose believing that it's possible is the first huge step, because if you don't believe in it, you're not going to experience it. If you don't believe
Mhm.
it's possible, you're not going to experience it as possible. So I'm always saying to people, well, be open to the possibility, be open to the thought that this could happen, but it won't necessarily happen in the way you're expecting. You might hear a voice in your head, but you might not hear a voice in your head. And I mean, I've had that experience with different people. The class that I was teaching Asher in, I haven't mentioned this, but there were 3 or 4 children there who could communicate with me telepathically, but in different ways. One of them would do it just by beaming emotions at me. Another one, I could actually hear his voice in my head just like he was talking to me, even if he was the other side of the school. I knew that this particular child, it wasn't Asher, it was another little boy, um, wanted my attention. Perhaps somebody'd fallen over in the playground or something, and he wanted to call me, and he would just call me telepathically because he could do that, and I'd hear his voice in my head and think, oh, better go and find out where Max is and see what the problem is. And so yeah, we don't necessarily get it the same from everybody, and I think everyone who is nonverbal has their own way of doing it. My friend Caroline Coleman, who you might have heard of, she's got a son called Kyle who is nonverbal, and he speaks to her in dreams. He can't chat away to her in everyday life, but she goes into a sort of lucid dream state, and
Mhm.
not only does he talk to her, but he actually gives her song lyrics that she can then write down. And although he's not able to talk, he's able to sing, and he can uh, they work together on these songs. And uh, that's amazing. I've had others who've, talked to their parents by somehow manipulating what music they hear on the radio, and a particular song will come on, and it'll be like, oh, okay, that's the message you're trying to get across to
Hmm.
me. So, yeah, I think there's so many ways that people can communicate telepathically, and we've just got to be open to all of them and not have too many expectations that it's going to work out this way or that way just because we've read a book about somebody else it worked for that way, because
Right.
your own case is
Yeah.
different. But no, definitely being open to it, being prepared to receive information in any way, and then being prepared to believe what you get.
Hmm.
And I didn't find that easy. It took me a very, very long time to really trust my, because you're so I was separated from Asher for quite a long time before we started using the telepathy that we're using now. And whenever his thoughts came into my head, I just told myself it was just wishful thinking. I so much wanted to be back in contact with him, and he wasn't going to use words anymore. So, you know, obviously I wanted this to be a message from him, and it must have been really frustrating. It was really frustrating for him because I just was trying so hard to get through to you, but you kept saying, "Oh, just making that up. Oh, that's just me, imagining things." And, yeah, it took quite a big effort to get through to me. I was a slow learner.
Yeah. Trust is a big word because there's belief and then there's trust. And trust, you have to
Mm,
really trust, and yeah, because if you don't trust, then it's hard to actually believe. But or the
yeah,
other way around, maybe. I don't know, but you really have to trust in it. And I know that includes like your intuition, your guidance, everything you're getting. Like when I came back, I didn't always um trust, or maybe I was like, no, maybe I'm not getting it. Like I doubted myself, on a lot of things, and it ended up being, what I got. And it was really interesting to go through that journey of, but everybody's open to it. I think, and everybody can do it. It's just a matter of maybe focusing, because like being on the other side and the near death experience, and them, because when I met the light beings, I was trying to talk to them, but I was in my thinking I was human, but out of the body you have no body. So they're like, drop your human consciousness. And so when I was able to do that, then the telepathy kicked in. So I think it helps, meditating and intention setting and believing and trusting, that we can do
yeah,
it.
yeah. That sounds very good advice. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, that must have been amazing. I envy you the near-death experience. Well, I don't know what the circumstances were, but actually having that experience must be incredible.
It was. It was.
Yeah,
I love that I had it, not what caused it, but I love that I had
yeah.
the experience that brought me to it. Because I also experienced the love on the other side. Has Asher showed you or talked to you about the love that exists on the other side?
Yeah, yes, he has. And he says, I mean, when he initially started talking to me, he said he felt he was going into a huge library, which I think must be the Akashic Records. And he said he was visualizing it like a sort of great big old building, like in an old university or something. And you've got this huge library. But he said he was just, there was some force of caring that was, if he had a question, it would just draw him towards the right shelves, the right part of the library, the right area in which to find the information he needed. He
Nice.
said there was this really benign, beautiful presence that was just always helping him because they realized that his task was to bring back information. So there'd be me sitting at the other end of the country saying, well, tell me about consciousness and tell me about, what happens after death and tell me about this and all the things that I couldn't get answers to on Google, the sort of things you really want to know about. And yeah, he'd just go into this library, but he said there was guidance and there was these, he sort of does call them entities, I think, but he just talks about the light an awful lot and how the light is just so loving and caring and just looking after us all and watching over us all. And yeah, it's certainly got rid of any fears I have of the hereafter. I just have
Hmm.
no fear at all about death because to me, death just, isn't something that's on my radar anymore. It's just a change of state and getting rid of the body, as you say, moving out of the body consciousness and into something that's much more expanded, much more beautiful.
Hmm. Yeah, that's beautiful. It's a great way to look at it. Yeah. And yeah, I don't have a fear of the death anymore. Sometimes I just feel, I'm like, okay, I want to go home. 'Cause,
Yeah.
I feel not that I'm really homesick from that. Like I feel within myself though, there's this wanting to just go home. It's almost like a homesick, but it's just a really interesting feeling that I haven't really put my finger on yet. But I'm gonna say it's my soul wanting to just go home and be out of here. That's how I kind of look at it. But has Asher said anything about the new beings coming in? I've done a little bit of channeling on that. Has he mentioned anything about them?
He tends to avoid such, I think he doesn't want to get, as soon as you start talking about Arcturians, say, or, particular beings or the Atlas, whatever it is, there's so much. And he doesn't want to get caught into boxes. He says there's definitely we're being watched. There are plenty of entities, and a lot of them don't have physical bodies, and a lot of them have very different physiology to what humans do. But that's not really the important thing. It's not like, ooh, the little green men are coming and they're going to do this, that, and the other. It's something much more expansive. And when I've spoken to him about the beings that he works with, he says, well, some of them are incarnated on Earth, some of them are non-speakers who are talking to me because they can't get across their message. So he said, I'm a kind of bridge because I'm able to communicate with you, with me,
Hmm.
so that I can tell what they're saying. So some of them are incarnated in non-speaking bodies, and some of them aren't incarnated at all. Perhaps they have been in the past, but they've decided to stay in the realms and guide from there. And some of them are in different circumstances altogether. But he said once you've got the telepathy, it doesn't really matter where you are or what you look like because you've just got that connection.
Hmm. Yeah. And some people have told me, like, well, who do you channel? And I'm like, does it really matter? Because the
Mm.
message is what's important, right? It doesn't matter. It's like another way to attach to the body. It's attachment to the being or where it's coming from. It's the message that matters. So that's beautiful that he says that. Um, does he talk about like exploration of different realms? I know you kind of touched on that. Is there anything like that you feel like you want to share on one of the places that he's gone?
No, he doesn't give me a great deal of information about the places he's gone. Again, he says he's in a realm where time and space don't really matter. They're not really a particularly important part of it. And there's just something going on that, is beneficial to us. So no, he's not talked about. Occasionally he'll sort of describe some parts of the realms, but mostly he prefers not to get caught into that. Sort of similarly for extraterrestrial beings, it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's almost irrelevant. What matters is the messages that are coming through.
Okay. Perfect. And I also heard that you've gone on some train rides and learned some lessons on there. Is there one that really stands out to you that you would like to share?
Oh, we went on many train rides. He was completely obsessed with trains when he was a kid, and I don't actually drive. So if I wanted to take him out for a day, it was usually off on a train ride somewhere. And uh, yeah, I don't know. I've told the story many times about the water bottle on the train and
Hmm.
moving a water bottle. I'll tell that story again if you'd like me to. Um, I think he was in his early teens, and he was trying to explain manifestation, I suppose, to me, although he didn't use those words. And this was long before books like The Secret had come out, and manifestation was a big thing. It was something that I didn't really understand. And he's just always told me right from a tiny child, we create our reality. And to try and explain it to me, because I was being very dense, he said, right, he'd got a water bottle in front of him, just a plastic water bottle we were sitting on a train with a table between us. And he said, well, how could we move this water bottle from my side of the table to your side of the table without touching it? And the bottle was full of water, and the table was bolted to the carriage floor, so I couldn't see any way of doing that. And he just said, see it where you want it to be. Just see it where you want it to be. Don't focus on where it is now, focus on where you've chosen that it's going to be. And so both of us were sitting there focusing on this other side of the table, and I was thinking, this is really stupid. I can't see any point in this, but I was going along with it. And then the guard came into our carriage to check our tickets, and he walked up and checked my ticket and checked Asher's ticket. And in those few seconds, for absolutely no apparent reason, he picked up the water bottle from Asher's side and moved it across to my side of the table, just in the place where we'd intended, and then walked on out, and he was gone. And I just stared at Asher with my mouth hanging open, and I said, what on earth happened? And he said, well, we saw it where we wanted it to be. And he said, because we're living on Earth, we can't, if it just teleported across the table, that wouldn't have worked with Earth's set of physics rules as they are at the moment. So it needed something to happen. He said it didn't have to be the guard, it could have been somebody else walking through and just knocking the table, or it could have been the train jolting and it rolled across. He said, but somehow or another, once you put the intention out, life just joins up the dots and gets it to wherever you want it to be. And he's always held to this. I mean, the thing I was just thinking about this the other day, that, when we had COVID and the lockdown, and
Hmm.
for a long part of that, Asher lives on the outskirts of London. He was commuting by train into central London every day, going to crowded railway stations and then
Wow.
moving into the place where he works, and going about, quite a crowded, busy job, moving to different parts of the building and then coming back the same way. Just about everybody I know in the UK caught COVID at some point, and Asher did not ever get it, not a touch of it. And I remember
Amazing.
saying to him, how did you avoid it? And he said, I focused on being well. He said everybody was focusing on being ill, on the symptoms, on,
Mm.
sort of what it would feel like to have COVID. And he said, I just focused every day on being healthy, because what you focus on is what you get, it's what turns up in your reality.
I love that. Yeah. And when you were talking about the train, what popped into my head is you got to work with the universal, the way the universe is on this level, the density.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, I kind of got that. Is he sending messages?
Quite likely. He's done it before. Yes.
Because it felt like a male energy, and it was like this energy that came in, and I was like, okay, you got to work with this realm the way it is, in manifesting. You can't just do it through, kind of like you were saying, excuse me, and you got to work with how it is, the elements here, in order
Yeah.
to manifest it. So, okay, that's interesting.
Mm. Yeah. Oh, I'm glad he's decided to join in the conversation. Yeah.
That's
It's
what
not
it
the
feels
first time
like.
he's done that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. Awesome. Now, I always like to tie our conversations to death, of course. And you kind of already talked about communicating afterlife with Asher's mom. So I'm glad that he got to resolve that. So, what is some words of wisdom that you can give to people who may be fearing death, or if they're approaching that time in their life?
I can't think of much other than what we've already said, really, that I had absolute concrete proof from Nina, Asha's mum, that she was still very much in touch with us, still very much a part of his life. And she contacted me, and I had no background in mediumship or, any contact. In fact, for a long time, I just thought, where are these weird feelings and that coming from? Because, it's just not something that was on my to-do list at all. So there was that. I mean, looking at it from what Asher has told me, one of the things he said is that we put on, every time we're born, every time we're incarnated on the earth, we put on a costume, which is not just the way we look, but our personality and so forth. Once we're moved back to the afterlife, back to the realms, that costume is ours. And he said, imagine a wardrobe where you've got all of these costumes, all the other lives you've lived. And at any point, you can put one of those costumes on, either because you need to contact somebody who's still incarnate, still on the earth, or because they've called to you. So, say perhaps a grieving relative goes to a spiritual medium or some such person and sort of says, I really, really want to get in touch with my granddad, my auntie Flo, whoever. Um, that being in spirit can sort of, they get the connection and they think, okay, we need, I need to put this costume back on. I need to turn back into Auntie Flo, even though they're an expanded being by now. And they can still come along and answer those questions and talk about that person's life and the life that they shared together. So I think that's a wonderful thing. And I think there's so many examples now, so many documented examples of people who are able to send messages from beyond and join with us, that I think there's, yeah, obviously we're going to feel grief, we're going to feel sadness of not seeing them in the flesh anymore, but they're still very much with us.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Is there anything or any last words or messages that you would like to share, or Asher?
Um, I'm just looking at the things he told me to say. He said, we're here to make choices. Those choices form our reality and expand consciousness. And he's been quite quite interesting here. He says, just doing what other people tell us to do is a waste. So he said, that's why you haven't been guided, meaning me, myself, you haven't been guided to run workshops or to teach people this, that, and the other. He said, everybody's looking around for somebody to train them and teach them, and they all want to sort of join all these seminars and webinars and what have you to be told what to do. And he said, actually, everybody has to make their own choices and make their own decisions. And he said, we'll happily share what I learn in the realms, but people can use it or they can ignore it as they feel right. And they've actually, it's really important that we all make our choices, because that is what's expanding consciousness. That's what's going into the Akashic records. That's why that library is beginningless and endless, because it's being built all the time by every thought and every choice that we make while we're here on earth. So that's, yeah, that's his parting words, if you like.
Awesome, beautiful. Yeah, and even though we have, I think, made the agreements or our plan from the other side when we come in, we still can make changes as we go and
Oh, sure.
change it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No, absolutely. We've got free choice, and we can decide how we run it. Yeah, certainly.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for your wisdom and everything that you're doing in Asher. And my heart goes out to both of you. And I appreciate you guys coming on and spending the time with me today.
No, it's been lovely. And if anyone wants to reach us, we're at www.ashertree.com. That's ASHERTREE. And they can find out about our book. We're now writing a second book, which
Beautiful.
is nearly done. So, yeah, and sign up for newsletters. And I will definitely put links to this interview on there as well, so that people can read about that and have a
Beautiful.
listen.
And
So,
all your links will be in my description as well, so people can
thank
find
you.
out how
That's
to reach
lovely.
you. So,
Brilliant.
all right. Well, thank
Oh,
you.
well, thank you. It's been lovely chatting to you, Laura.
You too as well.
Let's talk about death, baby. Let's talk about you and me. We're not the one and only. It's going to happen to everybody. Yeah, baby. Say it isn't so, baby. It's the truth, don't you know, baby? We're all consciousness living